Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to PyroFalkon's Let's Play Extravaganza, where I am playing Final Fantasy VI, my favorite game of all time, and I am joined by the Akamura.
Hi, everyone.
And after our wonderful last episode, I hope you guys really enjoyed that, but we have some problems, as you can see with Cyan. He's imped, which is really a Kappa, but in this translation, he's an imp.
By the way, it's the 4th, so if you hear the weird little cracklies in the background, it's hillbillies.
Yep, happy 4th. Belated, apparently. So, here we are in Albrook, which is a town of nothingness at the moment. We're gonna, since we're in pieces here, we're gonna stay the night. And this episode's gonna show kind of slightly not much progress, so I'm gonna just kind of fill some time here. Because we need to go west and do a little shopping in the town far to the west, and we might run into a chimera. How do you pronounce it? Chimera?
Chimera.
I always pronounce it chimera. For as wrong as that might be, that's how I pronounced it. So, anyway, because they sell good equipment over in the west, so that is where we are going. So, Zugawug's Trollbane, who is probably our #1 fan, or certainly in contention to be our #1 fan, mentioned in the comments for episode 2 or 3, was asking about the numbering system of Final Fantasy, and she had looked it up once, and her memory was mostly refreshed when I explained it, but just in case in the future this video, for whatever reason, ends up elsewhere on YouTube, or the comment disappears, I figured I'd explain it. So, this is Final Wow, did you just notice the Celeste punched the dude? That means she has no equipment on. Oh, this is gonna be a treat.
Why are you fighting critically aged Mary Poppinses?
Did we just die? Run, Locke. Run like you're fucking
What just happened?
I wiped. Which is incredibly fucking embarrassing.
It's because I called them critically aged Mary Poppinses, isn't it?
I think they got really pissed off at you, yes.
What the hell happened?
Welp!
Check your gear?
Yeah, we must be... Well, I know we're critically underleveled, so this is definitely going to be the episode of a lack of progress here. Okay, well, first of all, Celeste needs her equipment back. Apparently.
Oh yeah, because she was in the opera.
Yeah, so she lost all of her stuff. So, the very first Final Fantasy came out whatever year, and I meant to research it, but I didn't prior to this. But, the first Final Fantasy came out, and it came out, on the NES, and it came out in both Japan and the United States. However, in the United States, it wasn't really all that well received. Nobody really hated it. It's just that RPGs, well, even video gaming in general, wasn't mainstream yet. It was pretty much a hobby for rich people. So it wasn't really much in the eyes of anyone. And Dungeons and Dragons existed by then, but again, that was, you know, in basements of mothers, whatevers, you know, the stereotypes. However true or untrue they may be, that's where a lot of the role-playing experience were relegated. So no one really got into this game. So when Final Fantasy 2 and 3 came out, also for the Nintendo Entertainment System, Japan didn't even bother bringing them over here. They just said, fuck it, if the Americans don't want it here, then we won't force it down their throat. And that's actually, in retrospect, a good decision, because Final Fantasy II didn't really bring anything to the table, and Final Fantasy III, while it introduced the job system, was really overly difficult and kind of annoying, which we now know because it has been brought over here. But anyway, in retrospect, I can see why Square would not want to bring Final Fantasy II or III over here. But then the Super NES came out, and Americans were softening their view on RPGs in general. So Square tried again and brought Final Fantasy IV over here, but they called it Final Fantasy II because it was Americans' second release. And it did well, and even today, Final Fantasy IV is regarded among some people as being the best one in the series. Of course, I wholeheartedly disagree. Or at least
that means he disagrees with his whole heart, guys.
Or at least it was it was considered the best one of the Super NES era, which again, obviously, I disagree with that hard.
Yeah, beat the shit out of those critically aged Mary Popinses.
So, okay, see, this is why I need to take notes about what rages I'm picking for Gao, because I don't know if you noticed that, but when we just got acid rained, Gao actually healed off of it, and that has to do with whatever rage I picked for him. I don't know which one it was. But, oh god. Wow.
Bye, Locke.
Oh my god. We are so fucking underleveled. Yeah, yay, Cyan. Anyway, so
I can hear him now.
And that's
kicking the lock on St. Peter's Gate, and now he's back. Welcome back, Locke.
So Final Fantasy VI, or Final Fantasy IV came out. A lot of people loved it, but in Japan there were actually two versions of Final Fantasy IV. There was Final Fantasy IV Easy and Final Fantasy IV Hard. And in another probably smart move, Japan only brought Final Fantasy IV Easy over here to America, not the hard version. And looking back, again, in hindsight, that was probably the best decision, because RPGs were still not in the mainstream, and if you have a game that's... wait, Capture? I didn't realize that's what I got. If you have a game that's too difficult, it won't be taken in the mainstream, and you know it will sully the rest of the games in the series. Sort of like if Nintendo had brought the original Super Mario Bros. 2 over here to America, it may have ruined the franchise, or at least made people a little bit more nervous about getting on board with it. So Final Fantasy IV Easy came out, and people enjoyed it, but they still didn't really sell it as well as Square was hoping. So Final Fantasy V came out, and they decided not to try. They did not bring Final Fantasy V to America until the re-releases. And I find that to be a shame, because I feel that Final Fantasy V's battle mechanics are better even than Final Fantasy VI's. I think Final Fantasy V had the best battle mechanics in the entire series, period. And I mean the entire series. But whatever. So Final Fantasy V didn't come out, but Final Fantasy VI was special. It was different. It had this whole steampunk thing. It broke away from a lot of the things that Final Fantasy was known for, while still retaining what made Final Fantasy unique. So they went ahead and released it here, which, because it was the third release that Americans got, they called it Final Fantasy III on the Super NES. And it went over like gangbusters, and it wasn't just me. Final Fantasy VI is heralded by some as one of the best, if not the best game on the Super Nintendo. Not just RPG, but best game. Even though, again, as I said, I think the battle mechanics are weaker than FF5, but no American ever saw that back then.
Yeah. I'm not really getting into it, but I think the reason why is because I've been spoiled by newer RPGs.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable. That's why I mentioned in my top 10 video, like, by today's standards, Final Fantasy VI is incredibly shallow. There's no true choice, there's no morality meters, there aren't branching paths. You know, there's a whole lot of not customization going on. But back then, you didn't need it, and I argue you still don't really need it.
That is true.
The game stands on its own.
Yeah,
still.
My favorite game series is the Tales series, and you get less choice in Tales than you do in Final Fantasy.
But one of the things with Final Fantasy compared to the Tales series is the Tales is more active when it comes to the combat. With Final Fantasy, it's always been turn-based, and therefore there's waiting. And Ego Raptor just recently did a sequelitis on The Legend of Zelda, and he mentions that waiting is bad in gaming, because the whole point of gaming is to do things. And if you're not doing a thing, then you're not really gaming, and therefore there's no reason to even be playing. So that is one weakness with Final Fantasy compared to Tales.
That's
but
also
still
a weakness in modern games too, I think.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole shitload of like stretching out with pointless fucking quests and shit.
It makes the game feel longer, it makes the game longer, which makes it feel more epic or more important, but it's a false feeling.
I disagree.
What?
It doesn't. It makes it longer, but not a good kind of longer.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Let me clarify. To most people, it makes it feel more interesting or engaging.
Yeah.
That you're waiting. But for people who are actually in gaming for the experience, don't fall for it. And they need something more accurate.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a crass analogy, but I would rather have a 10-second mind-blowing orgasm than a long, drawn-out, sad screw.
Right.
Just one of them's longer, but the other one's better.
Exactly. So Final Fantasy VI came out. It did go over like gangbusters, and by the time Final Fantasy VI came out, RPGs were becoming more mainstream, and it wasn't just Final Fantasy, but basically you had this perfect storm where Final Fantasy VI and 4 were good games. 6 especially was good. And did some different things. And then you had Earthbound, which came along and did some different things. And you had Breath of Fire come along and do some different things. And all these RPGs started coming out on different systems, including the Genesis. I mean, I'm not going to just say it's all Nintendo. And RPGs became mainstream. They weren't quite there yet. They were still considered kind of a fringe of entertainment, but whatever.
If I'm remembering this correctly, like, was it 6 or 7 came out, and then just fucking everybody started translating RPGs?
It was 7, and that actually brings me to my final point here, my final history lesson, that by the time 7 came out for the PlayStation, not only was RPGs like firmly in the gamer's playbook at this point, but everyone was starting to get smarter because of the gaming magazines and just information that was... Because the internet wasn't quite out yet, I don't think. But people were just getting smarter. And the idea of imports and the fact that the Japanese had different games than the Americans, we started to realize that we didn't have every Final Fantasy. So when Final Fantasy VII came out, that's why Square basically said, fuck it, we're just going to go ahead and call it Final Fantasy VII, because by this point, everybody knows what's going on. So that's when they united the numbers, and, the history went from there, and we started getting other RPGs, including the old Final Fantasy games, which is great, because 5 is fucking amazing.
Like, in that translation fucking mess that happened post Final Fantasy VII, the Tales series got ported.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Which means I got to play my favorite game, which is Tales of Symphonia. Holy shit, if that game grew a dick, I would suck it.
Wow. Okay.
I love that game.
Clearly. We'll have to LP it for the channel. Or your channel, which you never update anymore.
Sorry, guys, I have school. But, seriously. Tales of Symphonia's characterization is fucking beautiful.
Since I've never played it, I'd have to... I'll withhold judgment until I know for sure.
I need to find it online for the GameCube so I can show you.
Okay.
The characters start off idiots, and they grow right before your eyes. It's amazing. It's like a chia pet that you just want to swaddle, teach the ways of the world.
That's good. I gave that Esper to Celeste at the right time. I forgot her freaking Esper unequipped too, so she wasn't gaining any magic points. So I switched it, and now she does, so now she's a little smarter, and she's a little stronger, because leveling up now increases her magic. Yeah. I'm also glad I went back and reviewed the footage and realized it's a Pterodon rage that makes Gao do the fireball everybody thing, which is awesome. So anyway, yeah, that's what's happening. We're just outside the town of Miranda, and assuming Cyan doesn't die here, we're gonna run in and grab some shit, including some Phoenix Towns. But do you remember the town of Miranda and where that was mentioned twice before?
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead.
Like,
I'm honestly
Cyan,
testing your...
Was it Cyan? I think it was Cyan. Like, it was back at the camp where, like...
Right.
Fuck,
Right.
what's his name? What's his name? Sabin was chasing Kefka around.
Right. So there was a soldier from Miranda.
Yeah.
He deserted, and we found him in Moblitz beaten the fuck out of. Remember? He can't even move, and he left, and he wants to write letters to his love in Miranda. Well, we're in Miranda now. So Miranda's a tiny town that's been fucked over by all these Imperials. But Lola lives here, and we go in, and there she is, worrying. My love hasn't sent me back any letters since he's been gone. I'm sick with work. Wait, what? I know we sent a letter. Maybe that conversation doesn't happen then until we get the airship. Like, freedom with the airship. Whatever. Anyway, that's Lola. She becomes a heavily important character in the second half of the game. And we will see that as we see it. Okay, so this place gives us the best crap. Alright, so new weapon for Locke. And hopefully we can get ourselves some good armor.
This
so yeah,
is making
even
me want to play Tales of the Abyss.
even seeing the time here on my timer, I know that we're not going to get to any more story advancements here. And I promise that, I'm going to have to compare that mithril helmet and see if that actually helps Celeste's magic. It does not, so she does not get one. No hat for you. So, what the hell was I saying? Oh, if I do have to do any additional grinding, I'm going to do it off camera, between this episode and the next. But I just wanted, I figured since we weren't getting all that much done at the moment, I would, wait. Huh.
I got some
Okay.
bad news.
What is your bad news?
I took all those caffeine pills yesterday, and I'm starting to feel the fatigue now, so I'm about to get really loopy.
Yay! That's good for us. Elixir
That's
in the
bad
clock?
for me.
Ah, no elixir in the clock. But yeah, so most grinding and most episodes, you know, I'm intentionally doing this series and I'm editing it and cutting it as necessary, as you've seen, to avoid grinding. And I wouldn't have even shown you what I'm doing here, except Miranda is important, and, you know, I just wanted to give you guys a little history lesson.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep moving back to Vector here. I'm actually nervous about going any further. I didn't realize how underleveled I am. So, you know what? I'm even going to call an early end of this episode, because there's probably not going to be much going on here other than fighting for me for a little bit. Which I guess I should have done... Oh, fuck it. Anyway, no reason for regrets. But this way, I can minimize the amount of time that you guys have to deal with seeing the same bullshit over and over, because I've had this discussion with Kalo, that RPGs are very hard to let's play for you guys, for the consumers, for the whatever's audience, because, you know, it's, especially here, it's turn-based, science meter hasn't filled up, I'm doing nothing, there's no story advancements, you know, nothing's happening. So I understand that RPGs are really hard to watch.
It would work for a later one like Final Fantasy 13, especially for me, because I ramble during the battles.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very linear.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the newer Final Fantasies, they, like, starting from 10, Ralph? Lovely. Starting from, like, 10, they seem to want to make RPGs more of a,
movie.
Yeah, that wasn't the word I was looking for, but that works. Which...
like Heavy Rain, a cinematic game, rather than...
Cinematic, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, they're trying to make them more cinematic, and I think it's because they know that people don't like the grinding, and people don't like... You know, it's like, here's the story, and now here's a quick fight, now here's a shit more story.
Yeah.
But my problem with Final Fantasy 13 specifically is that it has way too many cutscenes for an RPG for my taste.
Yeah, that's...
It didn't get Metal Gear Solid ridiculous, but it got pretty goddamn ridiculous.
I don't like it when companies find new markets because then they cut off people who liked their old stuff.
Right. But, I mean,
Like,
whatever. It's a
employ
business.
more people and cater to both.
But it's a business decision, so I get it. I may
Yeah.
not like it, but I get it. You know, kind of thing. But whatever. Also, my big mistake with the early battles, since I wiped at the beginning of this, is that I forgot that all monsters on this island are weak against magic. I was trying physical attacks, so I was setting myself up
Yeah,
for failure
that'll be a problem.
But it's one of those things, like, as soon as I died, I'm like, why wasn't I doing much damage? Oh yeah, because I'm supposed to be magic heavy here. It's basically teaching you that everyone needs magic, which it starts to pigeonhole you into making everybody a mage, which is probably the least good part of Final Fantasy VI. But whatever. We'll talk more about Final Fantasy VI and other games in the next episode, and by the next episode, hopefully everyone's around level 20, because this shit's getting annoying.
Oh, here's the thing.
Yes.
Like, let's do one of those cliffhanger questions. Everybody guess my favorite Tales of Symphonia character.
Character.
Yes.
That's assuming everyone here is familiar with the Tales series.
Everyone go look at the list of characters in Tales of Symphonia on the TV Tropes page and then get back to me and guess my favorite Tales of Symphonia character. I'll reveal it in the next episode.
I'll put a link to the TV Tropes page in the video description. God, I
Yeah.
hope I remember that 21 minutes into this episode.
You should probably also link to Ego Raptor's sequelitis video.
I
Since you did
should.
reference it.
I did reference it. Ego Raptor doesn't need any more freaking fans. He needs to give some of his fans to us. What the fuck? Wait, what?
You found a chocobo stable.
What? I did not know this was here. Holy shit. A secret
John?
I had not discovered yet.
This is beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a fucking unicorn. A veteran player is discovering something new.
Yeah, that's... I'm just as confused as you are, Cyan. Anyway, next episode tomorrow.
Cyan's looking at you with disdain. You didn't realize this was here.
Stop. Stop it, Cyan. Stop. Stop.
See you next time, guys.
Oh, why must you judge me so?
Because it's pretty easy. You do some reprehensible things.
God.